The startling start. It never occurred to me that my mother would be my most formidable foe. I sat alone in my dimly lit flat, my hands shaking as I watched the webcast. A scene from my family's Sunday dinner, which I couldn't attend since I was out of town for work, appeared on the screen. My mother sat at the head of the table, drinking wine, while family members laughed alongside her as she made fun of me. She hissed, "Oh, please." My daughter believes running a small legal firm defines her success. She dropped out of law school because she couldn't handle the stress and lacked the necessary qualifications to become a professional lawyer. She now solely represents the underprivileged and those in need who can't afford legal counsel. There was laughter. My stomach flipped over. To keep our family afloat, I had given up everything for years to pay for my mother's medical bills. Nonetheless, she showed me nothing but scorn. I clenched my fists tightly. She didn't know what would happen. Open book the first cracks in Chapter 1, Betrayal, Secret Reality, and the Beginning of Vengeance. I never expected to see my own execution in front of me. But there it was. Sitting in my flat, watching the live stream that would change everything, the pale gleam of my laptop screen illuminated my quivering hands. I discreetly placed a phone on the table to capture the grainy footage. My mother's dining room, with its polished wood furniture, clinking wine glasses, and lively conversation, dominated the screen. My busy schedule prevented me from participating in the Sunday luncheon tradition. My mother sat at the head of the table, spinning a glass of Cabernet in one hand and smiling mockingly. The words she spoke were more heartbreaking than any betrayal I could have imagined. She rolled her eyes and replied, "Oh, please," while sipping her wine. She believes she is successful because she owns a small legal practice? Let's be honest, she lacked the necessary qualifications to be a professional lawyer. The pressure of law school was too much for them to handle. She currently serves those who cannot afford legal assistance. Bottom feeders. Laughter. A heartbreaking, deep chuckle from the people I'd known all my life as family. My gut wrenched violently as I mentally replayed the words, trying to convince myself that I had misheard. However, there was no denying the laughter. My mother added with a shake of her head, "She presents herself as a formidable figure. However, it's crucial to acknowledge her desperation and failure. It always been." The words made me gasp for air. This extended beyond simple critique. This was clear, unadulterated contempt. I had sacrificed everything for this woman for 5 years. To pay for her mounting medical expenditures, I abandoned my dream of becoming a trial lawyer and founded a small family conflict law company. I had spent all of my savings and worked tirelessly to ensure she received the best possible care. And this was her assessment of me? I became conscious of something cold, and my pulse raced against my temples. She wasn't just venting. She never expected me to hear these things. Therefore, she felt free to say them. My mother never respected me. Not once. The understanding crept in slowly, like a poison. For years, I ignored the warning signs, the guilt trips, the passive-aggressive comments, and the fact that she always seemed to need me but never expressed any gratitude. However, this was something different. My name was dragged through the soil during this public execution, much to the enjoyment of a room full of family members. My breath became ragged and shallow as I clamped my jaw. Then came the final punch. Do you recall when she left? My mother leaned in the direction of my aunt, using a condescending tone. She sobbed when she went home since the tests were so difficult. Horrible. Tears obscured my vision. Actually, I had not dropped out of law school because I couldn't handle it. She was the reason I left. 5 years ago, one semester before my bar test, my mother passed away at work. The dreadful diagnosis of severe rheumatoid arthritis required careful care. She had clutched my hand while she cried in the hospital bed. How am I supposed to afford this? Insurance rarely covered essentials. The medications cost thousands of dollars per month. The sessions with the specialist and physical therapy were too many. So, I made a decision. I dropped out of law school. Instead of practicing litigation, I earned a license to practice family law. I developed a business with flexible hours so I could drive her to her doctor's appointments. I had given up everything to ensure that she never had to confront adversity alone. Nonetheless, she had altered the storyline. I was a failure for her. My phone vibrated against the table, bringing me back to the present. My cousin Ryan, who had secretly emailed me the streaming URL, texted me. "I'm so sorry." I just realized she was saying those things when it was too late. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My mind was racing with 1,000 alternative solutions. Why didn't you stop her? Why did you laugh along? Why does no one ever defend me? It did not matter, however. I took a deep breath before closing my eyes. I had spent years believing that she would appreciate me if I simply put in more effort and offered more. However, that day would never come. I knew the woman I had sacrificed everything for would never love me as much as I had loved her. For the first time, I felt only chilly, caustic resentment. I was not depressed. I didn't feel devastated. I was upset. And that wrath was more intense than any sorrow I had ever felt. I did not get any sleep that night. My mother's voice echoed in my thoughts as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, gazing up at the ceiling. Pathetic. Failure. She never had what it takes. Then, in the mix of wrath and enlightenment, I had a single, unambiguous thought. The money was gone, but where? For the past 5 years, I had meticulously watched her medical costs. However, she had begun to complain more in recent months, alleging that her insurance did not cover some expenses and that she required more money to see specialists. Never once had I questioned it. What about now? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong right now. I opened my banking app and reviewed the payments I'd made for her. I transfer tens of thousands of dollars every month. Medical costs. Therapies. Then there's something unusual. Several withdrawals of funds. Large, regular withdrawals from an account that I assumed was only for her medical treatment. My heart rate increased as I delved deeper. Transfers to unidentifiable accounts have occurred. A charge has been made for a luxury hotel located in Miami. One more for high-end jewelry. A terrible feeling crept into my abdomen. She wasn't just unappreciative. She had misled me. The betrayal was more profound than the words uttered over booze. It wasn't just that she despised me. She tried to take advantage of me. I suddenly comprehended. I didn't intend to cry. I had no intention of seeking an apology. I meant to ruin her. Open Book Chapter 2, Exploring the Deception, a perverted disclosure emerges of tension, deceit, and the beginnings of revenge. My body felt numb and energetic as soon as I turned off my laptop. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I tried to absorb what I had just learned. I had spent years devoting all of my energy, money, and sanity to caring for my mother. I had handled all medical expenses, prescription refills, and hospital stays without hesitation. Nonetheless, she publicly mocked me in front of my own family while sitting at the dinner table with a glass of wine in hand. Does she believe she is doing well? Please. She simply cleaned up mistakes for those who couldn't afford it, having barely survived law school. That is a safety net for individuals who have failed in life, rather than a job. Each syllable of her words sliced further into my bones, reverberating in my thoughts like a terrifying echo. Although I was aware that my mother was difficult, I had convinced myself that there was love beneath the rough edges. That she genuinely liked me. However, the footage had demolished that illusion. I was not only upset, but also enraged. Then an idea struck, which changed everything. The money was gone, but where? Her medical care had cost me more than $150,000 in the previous 5 years. She told me that not everything was covered by insurance. The expense of specialists was exorbitant. There was a need for treatment. However, if that were the case, why hadn't her insurance received any recent claims? I felt a cold creep up my spine. There was an issue. The very first clue. I took my laptop and launched the insurance portal. I had visited the website numerous times, primarily to challenge rejected claims or settle past due amounts. This time, however, I was actively searching rather than simply looking. Then I noticed it. The previous 6 months had been free of insurance claims. There have been no visits to the doctor, no hospitalizations. There are no prescriptions. I had been paying her, moving money, and ensuring she received the best care for 6 months, but there was no indication that she had spent a single cent of it on medical expenses. My stomach flipped over. I looked at her bank account, which I had linked to mine so that transfers were simple. Large transactions had been made to an unidentifiable account, and cash withdrawals of tens of thousands of dollars had taken place. The real gut punch came when I received a recurring payment to an address I had no idea about. I went to Google Maps and copied the address. It was not a medical facility. It was not a pharmacy. In the heart of the city stood a luxury apartment building. My blood was freezing as I stared at the TV. Had she been lying all along? The investigation continues. The next morning, I called. A private detective. An expert. Someone who could determine the exact area where my money disappeared. Mark Lawson, the investigator, called and asked, "What is the name of your mother?" I took a swallow. Patricia Sullivan. All right. And exactly what do you want me to find? After some hesitation, I took a deep breath. Everything. Mark laughed, but it wasn't a chuckle born of laughter. It was the type of laugh that comes from knowing that something would not work out. He requested, "Give me 48 hours. I'll stay in contact." 2 days later, I received an email with a file attached. The topic line was clear. "You must watch this." The key moment that transformed everything. My entire body stiffened up as I opened the file. It was more than just strange transfers and withdrawals. I had no idea my mother was living such a different life. Was she renting the opulent apartment for herself? She wasn't renting it for herself. She shared a home with another person. However, it wasn't just anyone. A distant half-brother of mine. Years earlier, she had disowned the same son. It was the same boy she had promised never to see again. The same son to whom she had secretly sent my money for years. There were photographs. They went shopping together. They were sitting in a restaurant, laughing heartily. I'm living a completely paid-for life. With my fingernails sinking into the wood, I gripped the arms of my chair. She had used me. She'd misled me. She further revealed that she did not even love the child for whom she had wasted my money. The deceit was complete. I was the moron who had been funding their second chance at life as mine was failing, not a pawn. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling, my breath coming in sharp bursts. I had gone above and above for a woman who had never earned my trust for years. I was finished now. I didn't shout. I didn't intend to cry. I'd destroy her. The plan's formation. I took up the phone and dialed Mark. I instructed, "Find out everything." My voice was now emotionless and unwavering. Chilly, calculating. Mark paused. "Are you sure? Things might get messy." It almost made me chuckle. Already, it was jumbled. I responded, "I don't care how deep this argument goes. Every bit of evidence is what I want. Because I wouldn't just leave when the time came. I'd make sure she had nothing left. There is no cash. There is no standing. And you will never again be able to control anyone." She thought she'd defeated me. She didn't know what would happen. Open Book Chapter 3. The devastating revelation stated, "A so dark truth is that there is no going back." I was sitting in my car, my knuckles white from clutching onto the steering wheel. There was no rejecting the evidence. The tens of thousands of dollars I had bled for did not cover my mother's medical bills. Something else had occupied its place. Alternatively, it could be another individual. My pulse was beating as I stared at my laptop screen, the recently downloaded files arranged like imminent explosives. The private investigator meticulously analyzed bank transactions, property records, and surveillance photographs. Each thread I untangled revealed a more profound and terrible reality. My mother was a fraud. Her medical care had ended approximately a year ago. The insurance company had approved her last major claim, but they had not approved anything else. There are no prescriptions. There are no hospital visits. So, where was the money? After picking the Financial Activity, Patricia Sullivan folder, I went through the documents. My stomach flipped over. A comfortable condo in a luxury complex 2 towns away, rented out. The payment was made in cash. Round figures for recurring substantial withdrawals include $5,000, $8,000, and $12,000. The transfer continued to occur on a monthly basis to a name I hadn't seen in over a decade. Logan Harris. I felt cold. The surrounding area grew hazy. My half-brother. My mother disowned that one 20 years ago. She had forbidden me from speaking to her. The person who stole from our family vanished and never reappeared. And she had finally brought him back after all these years. She had been using my money to pay for his entire life, not just his recovery. Treachery, in its purest form, was present. I was sick. I had worked 60-hour weeks, negotiated with insurance companies, cut back on everything I wanted, and given up my health, career, and dreams for her. She turned around and gave her all to him. I attempted to catch my breath by resting my forehead on the steering wheel and slammed my laptop shut. It was a devastating betrayal. She had both made fun of me and lied. The live stream, that heartbreaking, nasty webcast in which she mocked me in front of our entire family while drinking her expensive wine, all while benefiting from the sacrifices I made. I closed my eyes tightly. I had been defending her conduct for several years. She's just old-fashioned. She doesn't mean what she says. She's been through a lot. Falsehoods. She never respected me. Her love for me had never been genuine. She never considered me her daughter. I was a paycheck. I functioned as a financial instrument, a tool. And to her, I was just another failure, no longer useful. No, not anymore. I determined never to let her harm me again. Plunging further in the shadows. My hands trembled as I reopened my laptop. I had not yet completed my task. What else had she lied about if not this? I retrieved the condo's security records. The gated property required all visitors to check in at the main desk. I instantly discovered her name. For months, she had been going twice a week. She hadn't been there alone, though. There were repeated mentions of a second name. Sullivan Ryan. My uncle. The uncle who had laughed the most during the live stream was identified. I took a deep breath. My mother and uncle had both been complicit. They had set up an entire covert life behind my back. She was drinking expensive champagne in an affluent condo with the same man who had previously branded me a waste of space, while I was up late juggling medical bills, missing meals, and wondering about her next treatment. Both of them had made fun of me. And suddenly, I wasn't just upset. I was outraged. For so long, I had tried to be the ideal daughter. I had committed my entire life to a woman who would never return my affection. All right, if she wanted to treat me like a fool, I'd show her how deadly she is. A justice plan. I wouldn't just leave. It would be overly simple. I wanted her to experience my emotions. I wanted her to feel the grief, shame, and complete destruction of having all she had fought so hard for taken away. And I was very aware of where to begin. I started by calling the insurance company. Calmly, I said, I need to remove myself as guarantor on my mother's accounts. The agent paused. Are you sure? Therefore, she. I replied, I understand what it means. Make it happen. First, cut her off. I went to the bank afterwards. She had previously been too sluggish to manage her own paperwork, so I had been the sole signatory on her financial accounts, not because she trusted me. This was a tremendous mistake. I took back all of the money I had ever put in. Step 2. Reclaim what is rightfully mine. After that, I sent an email to my family. The topic line expresses the truth about Patricia Sullivan. I have included everything. I need copies of my bank statements, insurance documents, and screenshots identifying the owner of the luxury condo. The email contained a video link to the webcast where she had naively appeared. The last attachment follows. There was a photo of her and Logan standing arm in arm outside the condo. Step 3. Make her known to everyone she is duped. I sent it. Following that, I sat back and waited. Quiet before the storm. It took a very short time. Within minutes, my phone was overflowing with calls and texts. What the hell did you just do? My cousin Ryan inquired. I had no idea, explained my Aunt Lydia. I am sincerely sorry. Please call me. Mommy? Quiet. Excellent. It's possible that she was becoming conscious of how deeply she had buried herself. That wasn't the end of it. I was not about to abandon her. I planned to drag her along with me. What happens once I finish? She would never improve. Chapter 4. The Ideal Retaliation. Clever, astute, and completely brutal, the betrayal would be paid back in full. For her, I had broken my back for years. I spent years putting her needs ahead of my own goals and pleasure. How did she repay me? Dishonestly. With derision. By thievery. I had the option to leave. I could have allowed her to go lost in her deception. However, that was insufficient. She must have sustained an injury. Every sleepless night I had spent and every dime I had bled for her had to weigh on her. She had to experience the embarrassment I had endured for years. And I was determined to ensure that she did. Step 1. Terminating her totally. I started my strategy by simply starving her to death. I logged into all the accounts she had previously used for assistance, such as bank transfers, credit cards, and insurance payments. I also cut the lifeline. Was her health insurance canceled? Deactivated credit cards for her? Does she make cash withdrawals every month? Lost. She would not yet be aware of it. She wouldn't become aware of it until she faced a situation that required immediate attention. Not until she was informed that she was no longer covered when she entered a doctor's office. Her debit card was denied by the pharmacist. Not until she received an eviction notice from the landlord of her covert rental property, which I had been unwittingly paying for. I imagined her expression upon realizing. Would she lose her mind? Would she weep? Would she pretend to be a defenseless victim and phone me? I grinned. It made no difference. She had no one left to exert control over. The second step, the final exposure. Financially ruining her was only half of it. She had developed a life of dishonesty. It was time to destroy everything. I wanted everyone to see her for who she really was, not just for the pain she endured. I began by talking about the family. I sent an email that was well-written and supported by indisputable proof. Bank records and wire transfer screenshots. Rental agreement copies. The insurance records attest to the fact that she had never been treated. I didn't ask for their belief. I prevented them from doing so. The topic line was straightforward. The real Patricia story. I didn't stop there, though. I made contact with the clients she still had in the neighborhood. These were the people who had always regarded her as a good, compassionate woman in need. I gave her closest friends access to the streaming footage. The footage showed her sitting at the dinner table, laughing with the same family members she had been deceiving and making fun of, including her own daughter. The final blow came when I forwarded the entire file to a local reporter. The betrayal of a woman, the daughter who was hurt. It was all over within 48 hours. The destruction of my mother's false public persona, the poor, ill victim, the dedicated mother, the suffering single woman, was irreversible. Step 3. Observing her decline. The aftermath tasted delicious. My cousin Ryan made the initial call. His voice was tense as he added, "Jesus Christ, I had no idea. After seeing how she spoke about you, I should have said something." I didn't know how deep it went, so I assumed it was only. I gave him space to speak. I let his shame fester. His justifications didn't matter to me. By the time my Uncle James called, my mother was already no longer welcome in the family. "SED, you went too far," he growled. "Your mother is her." I chuckled. "When she was robbing me, did you mention that? Was she financing her covert existence with my money? When I worked myself to the bone for her, she allowed you all to laugh at me." Quiet. Then came a sigh of bitterness. "Patricia isn't handling it well." She probably wasn't. Step 4. The face-off. I anticipated her arrival. She was a cockroach. If the lights went out, she would always scamper back, no matter how many times you tried to squash her. At precisely 6 p.m., she knocked on the door of my office. "You're an unappreciative little bitch. Get this freaking door open." I was slow. Before I eventually unlatched the lock and pulled the door open, I let her fume, let the people in the hallway hear her yelling, and let her shame grow. She was trembling with rage and had wild eyes. "Excellent. How did you harm me?" She spit it out. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorway. "I simply let people see your true self." "You ruined my life." "No, you did. All I did was make sure you had to put up with it." She twisted her face. "How could you harm your mother in this way?" I cocked my head. "That's amusing. I had the same question for you." She shuddered and clutched the doorframe as if she would fall. She may have realized for the first time in her life what it was like to lose control. Excellent. Step 5. The last hit. While she stood trembling, I grabbed an envelope from my desk. This is it. I extended it to her. Her eyes darted over the contents as she grabbed it. Her bank account was empty. The insurance company canceled her policy. Her notice of eviction was finalized. There was also a tiny mirror at the very bottom, attached to the final page. Over it, the following message appears in bold letters. You were hoping for a failure? Examine yourself in the mirror. Her hands trembled as she gasped. For the first time, she struggled to find the right words. I softened my voice to a whisper and leaned in closer. Mother, this is how betrayal feels. I took a step back and enjoyed the moment. Goodbye. I then slammed the door in her face. I didn't have to listen to her sobs. I didn't have to watch her collapse to her knees in defeat. I was aware beforehand. The match was over, and I had prevailed. Open book The Reckoning in Chapter 5, Years in the Making of a Face-Off. Before I saw her, I heard someone banging on my office door. Bam, bam, bam. Open this damn door, Eleanor. My mother's high-pitched voice resonated around the corridor, laced with hate. I steadied myself with a slow breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for. No, I was prepared for that. Jamie, my assistant, looked in, shocked. Well, should I call security? I got up and straightened my blazer. No, allow her to enter. Jamie hesitated before nodding. She reluctantly unlocked the door. My mother hurried in as soon as it opened, her face flushed with wrath and her once perfect makeup damaged by what I assumed were hours of anxiety and tears. She had rumpled her typically perfectly ironed clothes. What happened to the diamond earrings she wore every day? Lost. I had never seen her seem so desperate in my life. You, she exclaimed, pointing at me with a shaking finger. You destroyed me. I folded my arms and leaned back against the desk. I've revealed you. There's a distinction. She paced back and forth, laughing angrily. You didn't deserve this. Are you even conscious of your actions? I cocked my head, appearing to be interested. Why don't you enlighten me? She felt her chest rise and fall rapidly. They've frozen my account. My family won't even answer the phone. Are you aware of other people's opinions on me? Oh, I do. I smiled slowly at her. They're saying the truth, Mother. She balled her hands into fists by her sides. I made you live. I raised you. You owe me money. I got closer and pushed off the desk. I owed you nothing the moment you decided to take everything from me. She offered a forceful shake of her head. I had to survive. You survived because of me, I said in a startlingly low voice. Through my labor, earnings, and sacrifices. You then squandered my money on a hidden second life with him, laughing at me. She parted her lips but kept mute. She was aware that I was there. My half-brother. She claimed to have disowned him years ago, but it was clear that she had not. I assumed I was the only thing keeping her alive because she had been secretly giving him money while pretending to be ill. Could she have dared to make fun of me? How long? I inquired. How long did you fool me? I asked. She took a deep breath. The whole time I said on her behalf. She winced but recovered quickly. She softened her voice and said, It was never like that. I required assistance. You wouldn't understand. My response was, Oh, I understand perfectly. I'm aware of your dishonesty. You used me. And you made fun of me when you thought no one was looking. Her face twisted again in rage. Eleanor, I was really frustrated. You always act like a martyr and assume you're better than everyone else. I gave a loud chuckle. A martyr? For you, I have placed my life on hold. Why did I squander all of my savings, take on more customers, and battle insurance companies? Could you settle my half-brother's gambling debts and buy high-end handbags? Her face took on a ghostly white hue. Bingo. I responded. So you did use the money to cover his mess. Even if she did not answer, the quiet was enough proof for me. My fury became more harsh. Colder. I walked over to my desk, grabbed a lovely file, and threw it on the table between us. Go ahead, I replied. Take a look. Despite her scowl, she picked up the pile of papers. Her expression distorted into something resembling dread as she flipped through them. Transactional records. These include bank records and emails. Proof that she had embezzled all of my money. This, I said calmly, is how I bring you down. She gave it a brief glance. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I raised an eyebrow. I could report this to the police if I wanted. Deception. Theft. Financial abuse. I could put you in a courtroom or a cell with what I have. Her eyes flashed around like a cornered animal as she lurched backward. I continued, but I won't, because you're not worth the effort. She blinked. You already have nothing left, Mother, I said. And that's far worse than any jail cell. She pushed the file off the desk and roared. She scattered the papers like leaves. UB*TCH, you are so unappreciative. I grinned. It is for me. Eleanor. You always do. The Aftermath and an Unexpected Twist Pushpin Chapter 6. Finally, the storm had arrived. I had relished every moment of my vengeance, even if the repercussions were far worse than I had anticipated. I had given up everything for years, including my future, work, and finances, because I believed I was assisting a mother who needed me. In reality, I had been giving money to a skillful manipulator. She was now paying for it. I sent emails exposing her deception, and they rapidly became viral. Her carefully planned web of deception unraveled overnight. The family members who had previously stood up for her walked away with disgust. When my half-brother, the golden child she had been secretly paying for with my money, went missing, she was forced to deal with the debris on her own. What about my mother? She lost everything. Her insurance was canceled, her savings were exhausted, and she was faced with the terrifying realization that she had no one left to control. However, the final blow hadn't yet been delivered. Fire, life and death. I had shattered her world 3 days before. While having coffee at work, I perused the aftermath. I can't believe you did that, but... Aunt Margie had texted, I understand now. Ryan, my cousin, says, I regret not speaking up sooner. She used us all. However, her landlord had the nicest message. You kicked your mother out. She had neglected to pay her rent for the previous 3 months. She's attempting to find a place to stay. I wanted to let you know about this. I grinned. I did not want her to be homeless. However, I wanted her to feel desperate, just like she was when I spent all of my money on her purported medical bills. News of my mother's metamorphosis from a well-groomed matriarch to an embarrassed social misfit spread quickly. Behind her back, the same people who used to drink wine at her table whispered. I wasn't done, though. Not quite yet. Fire last conference. It was to be expected. There was a loud, furious knock on my office door. I stayed in bed. I simply said, come in. She entered with a very different appearance. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes were wrinkled, and she lacked the confidence that had once made her impenetrable. She pushed a crumpled eviction notice onto my desk. Her voice quivered as she exclaimed, You did this. I reclined in my chair, completely undisturbed. Mother, I did not do anything. You subjected yourself to this. She had bloodshot eyes. You made me seem horrible in front of everyone. Could you please explain how this happened? I'm your mama. I shook my head and let out a big breath. Furthermore, I was your daughter. For 5 years, the person who cared for you damaged my future. What did I get in exchange? She swallowed forcefully and remained silent. Mockery, I said icily. You embarrassed me first, Mother. You stole from me. You misled me. You gave me the sensation that you were dying when you moved my money to my half-brother's bank account. You called me a failure in front of the entire world on a webcast. Despite her distorted expression, I saw a shift in her gaze. Fear. You don't understand, she continued, her voice low. Enlighten me. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother's terror as she paused. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said quietly. I needed security. I laughed a little dryly. Safety? Even when you have everything, you still want more. What about now? You have nothing. I could feel dread creeping in as she clenched her hands. I have nowhere to go, she remarked, her voice cracking. I glanced at her, feeling nothing. That's not my problem anymore. Her lips twitched. You're just going to let me suffer? I cocked my head and examined her as if she were a total stranger. Did you ever care if I suffered? Quiet. I bent over. Have you ever considered how I managed to keep your lights on, even if it meant losing sleep? Did you ever feel bad that I stopped dating, traveling, and living because you received all of my additional income? She spread her lips and then closed them. I grinned. That's what I thought. The last action. I stood up, opened the drawer on my desk, and took out an envelope. Her eyes were wide and desperate as she stared at it. Inside is a check, I said, enough for a one-way bus ticket and a deposit on a cheap apartment in a town far away from here. She reached out with shaking palms, but I jerked it away. As I said, there's one condition. My voice became frigid. She took a swallow. What? You never respond to me. You never appear in my life, at work or at home. After you take the money, you disappear. I could see her defeat, despite her angry expression. There was nothing more she could do. I was holding the envelope when she took it. You think you've won, she explained. I grinned. No, Mother. I lost. I did it by you. She turned and hurried out of my office without saying anything else. And I was free in an instant. Fire the final twist. Life resumed after 3 weeks. My last tests for renewing my law certification were successful. My company has taken off. For the first time in years, I felt lighter and free of my mother's influence. Then, one night, I got an SMS from an unidentifiable number. Check the news. As I clicked the link, I felt a shudder down my spine. In an identity fraud scheme, a woman was arrested. Patricia Sullivan, an evicted socialite, is accused of stealing financial information from her former coworkers. My mother's mugshot stared back at me. I exhaled slowly. Despite being handed an escape route, she chose deception. At last, she would face accountability. I reclined in my chair, looking up at the ceiling. Nobody was satisfied. I don't have any regrets. Only relief. Finally, she had received what she had sown. I also avoided cleaning up her mess for the first time. Pushpin the final reckoning in Chapter 7. A fresh start, justice served, and the sweetest retribution. I never imagined that getting even would feel so gratifying. I inhaled deeply as I stood across the street from the dilapidated motel where my mother had been made to reside, feeling as though the years of manipulation were finally coming to an end. She had fallen so far that the dilapidated motel was a stark contrast to the cozy suburban house she had once called home. I gave up my own goals to help her for years, but in return, she betrayed me. However, it is no longer the case. I was back in charge. It was time for the final maneuver. The neon motel sign buzzed softly in the humid night air as I strolled through the cracked parking lot, holding a little packet. The apartment smelled of desperation and dampness. Adapting. A weary-looking clerk at the front desk hardly looked up from his magazine. I need Patricia Sullivan to receive this. I slid the letter across the counter and said, Room 114. He arched an eyebrow. Are you certain she will accept it? I grinned. She'll accept it. There was no money in the packet. There were no attempts made to reconcile the funds. Only 2 things. I received a printed copy of the live stream transcript in which she labeled me a failure, made fun of me, and disparaged the same career that had supported her for years. The letter's reverse was taped with a tiny handheld mirror and the following message: You wanted to watch a failure? Examine yourself in the mirror. Before she could discover me, I pivoted and left. I wasn't present to witness her response. I didn't have to. A week later, an unexpected call life went on. My new legal practice was doing quite well. I had decided to focus on financial fraud and elder abuse after everything my mother had done to me. I wanted to help those who, like me, had been taken advantage of by their own families. It was poetic justice. Then, however, the phone rang. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number as I was at my desk going over a case. I would normally ignore it, but for some reason, I decided to take it up. Hello? A faint, quivering voice came over the line after a period of silence. Sinead? My whole body tensed. My mother hadn't called my name in months. I remained silent. I wanted the silence to make her wriggle. Her voice broke as she went on. Sinead, I don't know where else to turn. I've lost it all. I was aware beforehand. Exposing her financial crime destroyed my mother's reputation. The family who used to laugh with her had cut her off entirely, and my half-brother had disappeared the moment the money ran out. She was now without a house, money, or authority. My mother was really alone for the first time. I need assistance, she muttered. I let out a chilly laugh. Aid? That's amusing. Because you just gave me debt and disgrace when I needed a mother. Her breath caught. I erred. Errors. My voice became piercing. I was robbed by you. You misled me. In front of our family, let alone the entire internet, you made me look foolish. You want me to forget everything now? She was having trouble finding the perfect words, and I could practically hear it. The woman who used to be able to easily manipulate me was now struggling. Sinead, I'm ill. I no longer have the money for my prescription drugs. I shut my eyes. She was using her health as a weapon, following the same old script, and expecting me to revert to my position as the submissive, selfless daughter. However, that woman was no longer there. I resigned from my position as your guarantor. Do you recall? I said calmly. You are now responsible for your life, your bills, and your healthcare. Panic sounded in her voice. But you're not getting it. No, Mom, I interrupted. You're not getting it. This is the sensation of consequences. A sharp breath was heard. Then there was quiet. She was unaccustomed to dealing with consequences. She had never lost before. I let the poison spill out of my mouth as I continued. I hope you enjoyed your little live stream. Because you lost me at that very moment. Forever. Click. I ended the call. And I felt free for the first time in my life. The ultimate karma 6 months later. I no longer gave my mother much thought. My life had progressed. My practice was growing, I had won an award for my legal work, and I had even resumed dating. However, karma? Karma is always in control. My secretary knocked on my office door one morning. With hesitation, she added, "Someone is here to see you." She insists she knows you, even though I told her you don't take walk-ins. I scowled. Who is it? She made an awkward adjustment. Your mother is here. My lips slowly formed a smile. It was, of course. I made sure she waited by taking my time as I made my way to the reception area. I nearly didn't recognize her when I did see her. She looked defeated. Her luxury clothing had been replaced with a coat from a thrift store that engulfed her slender figure, and her previously immaculate hair had become disheveled. I felt nothing, but she was humbled. Sinead, she said, her eyes begging. Please. I cocked my head. Why are you in this place? She stumbled. I just wanted to see you. I desired to. To what? With a strong voice, I cut in. To express regret? Are you asking for financial assistance? To make me feel guilty about having to clean up your mess once more? She winced. I'm struggling to find anything, she expressed. Not even a house. I pretended to think while folding my arms. You seem to have gotten what you wanted at last. She screwed up her face in bewilderment. What? It was always your desire to be the victim. You always wanted to be the one who suffered, the one who was impoverished. This was the woman whose daughter had abandoned her. Congratulations, I murmured in a mockingly sympathetic tone. It's real now. She let one tear fall down her cheek. Excellent. I leaned a little closer. Remember the message I left you? I asked quietly. She paused. Her face crumbled then. She recalled. You were hoping for a failure? Examine yourself in the mirror. I stood up straight. I need to get to a meeting. Security will escort you out. She parted her lips as though she wanted to say something, whether to curse me or to beg. However, she didn't. Her supply of lies had finally run dry. I was at peace as she turned and shuffled toward the door. She had stolen everything from me for years. Now, though, she had nothing now. And I had everything. As the world becomes more interconnected, the importance of boundaries and interpersonal relationships will be greater than ever in 2025. The moral of the story is clear. Self-respect should never be lost in the name of self-sacrifice. Many of us, especially those from older generations, grew up learning to prioritize family above all else. But what happens if that loyalty is abused? The path of S.E.D. Sullivan shows us that forgiveness does not imply accepting destructive behavior, and that love without respect is manipulation. Whether it's with friends, family, or a love partner, we must be able to recognize when a relationship becomes unbalanced and stressful. Setting boundaries isn't harsh, it's necessary for survival. This lesson is critical as we move forward in an era of economic insecurity and increasing family demands. You are not obligated to bear the burdens of those who refuse to help themselves. Walking away from mistreatment demonstrates strength, not putting up with it. Your worth is determined by how much you value yourself rather than how much you provide.